Hello again everyone from Tokyo, Japan, and welcome back to Japan Vintage Camera. Today's video is going to be another instructional video showing you how to refresh an old Olympus pin or Pin S half frame camera. This video is for the early Olympus pins, the full manual ones, which do not feature a built-in light meter. The Pin and Pin S were replaced by the Pin EE and Pin D, which are quite different in how they are put together and how they are maintained. So once again, this video is only for the first versions, the Pin and the Pin S. There isn't much difference between the Pin and the Pin S. The only difference is that the Pin S comes with a slightly faster f2.8 lens. What we're going to be doing in this video is we're going to be cleaning up the shutter blades a little bit so they run more closely to the proper speed. We're going to be cleaning out the lens elements, and we're going to be cleaning out the viewfinder system on the top. We need a few tools for this job. The first thing we need is some slotted screwdrivers like so. We need pointed tools, a pointed spanner, something like this here. You can also use a pair of needle nose pliers with the tips sharpened up on them. And if you don't have one of those, something like this also works. This is another kind of lens tool, but which we can use for other things on the Olympus Pin S. And I also like to have a very fine tip screwdriver for a couple of the jobs that we need to do. We're also going to need some cotton swabs. And I use a pair of pliers to flatten the tips of the cotton swabs so I can reach them into clean places which I couldn't reach otherwise. We'll need a little bit of lens cleaning fluid, a little bit of glue, and we may need a knife like this one here, this simple box knife. And here's the lens cleaning fluid which I use. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to try to free up the shutter, clean up the shutter blades a little bit, and make the shutter run more accurately. So we'll go ahead and remove the back from the camera and take a look at the shutter blades. The good thing about the Olympus Pin and Pin S is that the shutter blades are exposed. They are not covered by a lens element, so they're quite easy to access and clean off. The shutter blades in this one look a little bit dirty. It looks like they have a little bit of oil and dust on them. The shutter fires, it might be a little bit on the slow side. To clean the shutter blades, what I do is I take a clean pure cotton swab and I add a little bit of lighter fluid to the tip. I charge the shutter and I set it to one of the faster shutter speeds, from 1/60th of a second or faster. Then I will wipe the lighter fluid around the blades and cycle the shutter. I look at the tip to see if there's any oil or anything coming off. You may have to do this a few times to get them reasonably clean. We're only going to be cleaning the one side of the shutter blades here. It's really difficult to get to the other side, and removing the shutter assembly and overhauling it is kind of beyond the capability of most people. So we're just doing a simple cleaning to try to get it within spec. One thing that you may notice if you try doing this is that the shutter blades may run slower or actually stick once you have started cleaning them with lighter fluid. And that's because the lighter fluid is kind of distributed around the shutter blades and is making them move slowly. You can take a blow brush, or I have a can of compressed air here. A couple quick jets to dry out any of the lighter fluid between the shutter blades, and it seems to be running pretty good now. That looks about within spec. We'll try the slowest speed. Alright, so far so good. Okay, so that's it for cleaning the shutter and getting it running. And I'll let you know now that sometimes this doesn't work just with one try. It may take a few tries, a few cleaning cycles to get the shutter to where it will operate consistently. You may clean off the shutter and it may sound good and run properly for a while, then after a day or two it'll start to run slow again. I recommend doing this a few times over the course of a day to make sure that you get any residual oil and stuff out of the blades, and then when you're done you should be able to use the camera and have the shutter firing more accurately. Alright, let's take a break and then we'll move to the next step. Alright, the next step is going to be cleaning the lens elements on the inside and outside. These cameras come with a really high quality lens, the D-Zuiko lens, which is just a simple 4-element lens, but quite a good performer, and good enough that Olympus used it in a number of different cameras over the years. It's a simple design which is easy to get into and easy to clean. And of course the front of this one, I've already cleaned the front element. What we're going to do next is we're going to clean the back element. So we'll go ahead and set the shutter to the B or bulb setting. And I'll take a cotton swab, pure cotton swab, put a little bit of lens fluid on that, charge the shutter, and push the shutter button and just do a quick cleaning, not too much pressure. I have a ceiling lamp over my shoulder, and I can see the ceiling lamp reflected in the glass, and that allows me to make sure that I don't have any haze or marks or white marks when I'm cleaning off the lens. That looks nice and clean. Blow out any dust and let the shutter close. It looks like this has maybe a little bit of fungus on the inside of the lens, so the next thing I need to do is try to remove the fungus from the inside. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to remove the front lens elements, and I need a kind of pointy tool for that. That's what this one is for. If you don't see any fungus inside the lens, then you don't really have to worry about it. Just cleaning the back and the front should be enough. Okay. A little rubber stopper tool, which makes this job a little bit easier. Okay. Yes, there's quite a bit of fungus on the rear element inside the lens. You might not be able to see it from that far away, but I'll go ahead and clean it up. The good thing is that Olympus used really high quality glass and really high quality coatings on their Pin series cameras. Kind of learned from the problems they had for their medium format lenses, the ones which came on some twin lens reflex cameras and such, which were not so good. By the time the Pin series was out, they'd kind of perfected the, I guess, glass and lens coating formula, and they're much more durable than on some of the other earlier cameras. Okay, that's nice and clean. Go ahead and take a look at the back side. Okay. Alright, no dust, no marks. Go ahead and put this back together. Alright, and then we'll go ahead and tighten it back into place. Alright, so the shutter is now working and the lens is clean on the inside and outside. The next thing we're going to do is we are going to move on to cleaning out the viewfinder assembly, and let's go ahead and take a break and we'll get started on that. Alright, so let's go ahead and get to work on the viewfinder assembly. This is the job which takes the longest, but it is one of the jobs which it doesn't require much in the way of tools. It's quite easy to do. We just have to remove the top cover to the camera and remove the viewfinder and take out some of the parts inside it to clean and get it nice and clear. So I'll go ahead and start by removing the film rewind knob here. You have to do two things to do this on the Olympus pin camera. You have to loosen the screw underneath the rewind tab here, and you have to unscrew it by putting the screwdriver between the forks and turning left. You kind of have to do both together. Once they're loose, you can just kind of turn the knob and the screw while holding onto the film rewind shaft with your fingers, and then just pull it out. And I'll go ahead and put it back together here so everything is in one place and doesn't get lost. Be careful not to lose the screw or the little spring on the inside. I use a lens cap to hold the parts as I remove them. Next I'm going to put the film back on, which makes it, or the back door on, so it makes it a little easier to for the camera to sit up and to do the rest of the work. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take off this screw on top of the film counter. This is what you also use to reset the film counter to whatever number of exposures for the film you're using. One thing about Olympus in these days is they used some reverse threaded screws. So to get this one off, you don't turn it to the left, you have to turn it to the right. You'll find this in some other, like the say at the Olympus RC or DC, the self-timer lever has reverse threads, so you have to keep that in mind. So take off the screw and then take off this kind of knurled nut on the top. Next thing you need to do is remove the cover here on the flash shoe. And to do this without scratches, I take the small screwdriver and I push it all the way underneath, and then kind of pry it back a little bit, take the screwdriver out, and it pops off. The next thing I have to do is I have to remove 4 screws from the top cover. So there are 2 here which go under the film rewind knob. Okay, and quite conveniently they both decide to fall inside of the camera. And take out this the big screw underneath the flash shoe cover, and then small screw on the side. This one's being stubborn. The camera's been dropped a few times, so the screw isn't exactly straight. And we carefully lift off the top cover and remove the shutter button and the spring. Okay, and so we have the top cover removed. Let's take another break and then we'll move on to the next step. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started on cleaning out the viewfinder. This one's been taken apart sometime in the past. There's some electrical tape and stuff on the inside, and I see some glue spilled around. Go ahead and peel off the tape. It's quite old. This tape was probably put in here before I was born, and I was born kind of a long time ago. Then we'll remove this cover, which is made out of paper with a little bit of a metal or plastic backing on the inside. And on the inside here you can see the lenses and mirrors which make up the viewfinder assembly. What we're going to do is remove the assembly from the camera to make it easier to work on. So we'll take off these 2 brass screws here. And then there's a small screw kind of hidden in the middle, a black screw. We take those, and if we lift it up, the flash shoe should come off. So I'll add that to my other parts. Then we have to remove the viewfinder assembly It usually comes out quite easily, but there's a rubber seal on the back between the viewfinder and the top cover, and sometimes that makes it sticky and difficult to come out. The seal is still there, and I'll probably just leave it the way it is. And it's not the kind that dry rots or anything like that. So one thing that I do when I have the top cover apart like this, I will go ahead and clean it up with a little bit of chrome polish to get all the dirt and stuff off of it and to make it look nice. This one's fairly clean and in kind of good shape. Another thing to look for is this plastic on the top here tends to break off sometimes or get pushed off. So that may happen when you're disassembling the camera, so you'll have to glue it back into place before you put the camera back together. Okay, so we have the front glass here, which we're going to remove for cleaning. We have a couple of lenses here, which we are also going to remove. We're going to clean the beam splitting mirror here and the mirror here, and we're going to pop out this rear glass here to clean that off. And here we have the viewfinder mask, which we have to be very careful with. We can clean the front because that's glass, but we can't touch the back because that's made of a water-soluble kind of paint, which is painted around the frame lines. If you try to clean that off with lens cleaning fluid, you're going to smear it and make a big mess, and then you won't be able to see the frame lines anymore. So touch this part as little as possible. So let me go ahead and get some tools and we'll get started. Alright, so the first thing I want to do is take out the front glass. So I'm going to find my cutter tool, and there's some glue which is used to hold in the glass, and it's applied on either side here. Be careful handling these things so you don't cut yourself. I've managed to cut myself a lot of times over the years working on mechanical things. And sometimes this can be difficult to remove. The glue is really stubborn. They use a black epoxy glue, which is really difficult to get out. That's why I use a knife to kind of cut it and loosen it up. Okay. Yeah, and you can only get this cleaned properly if you remove the glass. It's possible to do it without removing the glass. You can get it somewhat clean, but to do a proper job, it's best to get it all the way out. Okay, since that's nice and stuck, as they tend to be, I'll go ahead and remove the lenses here to make it easier to get out the glass on the front. These are also glued in place, so what I'll do is I will cut the glue to release this seal, and then very gently lift them out. Be careful when using metal objects to move these, because these lenses are fairly fragile and can be chipped quite easily. They don't have to be put in any particular order, they just have to be facing the right way when you put them back in. With those out, I have more room to play with this. Bits of glue in the corners there. Sometimes on very rare occasions this glass comes out very easily, but I don't remember the last time it. Okay, alright, I finally got it out there. A little bit of drama, but it's out in one piece. Okay, I'll go ahead and put these screws aside here. So, go ahead and let out the dust. Alright, so first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to blow out the dust. That way when I am cleaning off the glass, I won't be rubbing any dust into the mirrors or reflective surfaces. Okay, and I'll go ahead and flatten the ends of the cotton swabs. That makes it easier to reach in and clean the entire surface. I'll start first with the mask for the viewfinder frame lines, and I will do this very gently. Though the front glass is glued in very tightly and carefully, the glue used to hold in the viewfinder mask is never put in very much, and it never holds it in very tightly, so it's very easy to knock it loose. And I'll clean the front side of the beam splitting mirror. I'll get another cotton swab to do the back side. The back side is where you want to be careful because you don't want to scratch the reflective coating. I'll rub it very gently. And then dry it gently. And there's a little intermediary lens in between, which I will also clean carefully. And then I want to clean off the glass on the back. I always take that off because I can never reach all the way to the edges if I don't remove it. And I'll just clean this off with my fingers. And then I clean it with a microfiber cloth. And next I'll glue that back into place before I misplace it or forget about it. Once again, I only use a very small amount of glue. When you look at this glass, it has a curved side and a flat side. The flat side is what faces toward the rear. And I'll press it back into place. Okay, and then I have to clean the mirror behind the viewfinder mask. This is what reflects the frame lines through the intermediary lens onto the beam splitting mirror and then through the viewfinder window. Okay. Alright, so next I have the two lenses which I removed to get out the front glass. So I clean these carefully, using the light coming over my shoulder to make sure that I'm getting them clean and not leaving any wipe marks. And I'll go ahead and drop them in. These don't have to go in any particular order. Both lenses are the same design. You just have to make sure that the flat part of the lens faces forward and the curved part is toward the rear. When you clean out the viewfinder to one of these cameras, it makes a really big difference in how easy it is to compose and shoot. These cameras are like 60 years old now, and so they get a lot of fungus and dirt and haze and stuff on the inside. So I put the two lenses back inside, and I'm going to put a drop of glue on either side so they stay in place. Once again, just a little bit of glue. Okay. And then the last step is cleaning off the glass. So, rub it in the lens, cleaning fluid with my fingers, and then clean it with my microfiber cloth. Okay. And to make sure it's really clean with no lint, because even microfiber sometimes leaves lint, I'll clean it with a cotton swab. Okay, that's that. Then I'll go ahead and put the glass back in. I have to make sure that the shiny part of the glass is facing toward the front and the matte part goes toward the rear. Alright, and okay. And then once again, I'll add a little bit of glue because I don't want this glass to rattle around. And I'll just put a little bit in case I find out later I've made a mistake and I have to take the camera apart to correct that mistake. I won't have to fight with the glue to get the glass out again. Okay, and that's it. And before I put it back in the top cover, I'll take a look through it to make sure it looks nice and clean and that the viewfinder mask hasn't moved. Sometimes these aren't glued firmly in place and they'll move around a little bit, and you can tell by looking through the viewfinder if it's centered or not. So you definitely want it centered in right in the middle when you're looking through the viewfinder. You want to be able to see the bright line, the frame lines all the way around. So let's go ahead and put it back on the top cover. So what I'll do is I'll take the flash shoe and I'll put it upside down, and then I'm going to go ahead and put the top cover on top of the flash shoe so all the holes line up. And the next thing I have to do is drop this in. It may be a little bit difficult because of the seal on the back. It fits kind of tightly against the back of the viewfinder. Okay. Alright, so that's in the right spot. I'll go ahead and set it back here. Okay, and go ahead and get the screws to put this together. Use these brass screws. Lining up these can be sometimes a little bit difficult, but they seem to be going in okay today. Less drama than usual. Alright. Make sure these are snug. Blow out any extra dust, but just a little bit of air pressure. I don't want to blow anything loose on the inside after I've glued stuff back in. Alright, so far that looks pretty good. Next thing we have to do is glue this I guess, dust shield back into place. This does a couple of things. First thing I'll do is I'll bend these tabs down because these are supposed to be grabbing onto either side. And I'll take my glue, and when you're using the glue here, you have to be careful not to let any like strings from the glue find their way down inside and get on the glass or anything. A little bit on the center, a little bit on the sides. And then on either side here, where the tabs fold over, I'll put a little bit of glue there to hold the tabs. And I'll make sure that it's flat and it's going to fit well. And I'll just slide it back on like that. Okay, so that's it for cleaning the viewfinder. It's nice and clean now. The viewfinder mask is good. It's bright and clear. It looks like brand new. We'll go ahead and take a break for a minute and then move on to the next step.